And hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Rich Sports Talk, your home for all the latest and greatest on the New York Jets. Make sure you give us a like, bash that subscribe button if you're new to the channel, if you want the latest on the New York Jets. We have a lot to talk about, and I know this video is a little later than usual because I was at the Jet game last night watching the third preseason game, and I have a lot of thoughts, including Zach Wilson, guys that stood out, some major takeaways. But the first thing I want to start with actually had nothing to do with the game last night, which was just announced hours ago that Aaron Rodgers will be playing in the final preseason game against the Giants. Now, according to Brian Costello, he will play. I'm a little surprised that he didn't play last night. My thought process is that Rodgers wants to play a little bit closer because the preseason now is a little bit weird with the scheduling because the Jets, of course, played the Hall of Fame game super early. But now with the way they've structured the preseason is that basically there's a mini bye in there. There's basically a 2-week layoff. So I think what Rodgers is looking at is trying to get these live reps a little bit closer. And the other thing, too, is maybe he's waiting to see what the offensive line is going to be. There's a lot to talk about with that. But even if Rodgers plays, I think it's maybe a series or two. I don't think he's going to play that long. I think it's just to get those live reps in a game, some live bullets, and they'll be all good. But that was the big news today is that Rodgers will be playing against the Giants. I don't have any super strong opinions about that. I do think it's nice to see him. I personally don't think you need to really have him play in the preseason, but it is nice to see that he will be out there in front of the live crowd for the first time at MetLife. And I think it's a good thing to get some of those live reps. The curious thing was who will be the offense. And my biggest takeaway, guys, from last night being there in person was Mekhi Becton needs to be at least in consideration for this team starting right tackle. I personally think he should be the team starting right tackle after last night, but he needs to get a lot of first team reps. And I thought that there was a lot of great things last night. And here's the funny thing. I know Mekhi wants to play left tackle, and there were concerns about his knee at the right tackle position. But in all honesty, I don't know if anyone else was there or watched the game. I thought Mekhi Becton actually looked better as a right tackle and looked more comfortable. Because when he was playing left tackle against the Panthers last week, you saw him struggle a little bit in the pass protection, had a little bit of trouble getting some of those reads down. And it just felt like, especially on the blind side, you might get some twitchier edge rushers. On the right side, I'll tell you, Becton looked really comfortable, and the Jets' running game you saw really pick up when he was in the game. He made a huge difference, and it almost plays to his strength. I don't think Mekhi Becton will ever be an elite pass blocker, but you can tell like his skill set and his best attribute is what he can bring into the running game. And he looked really comfortable. 18 times in dropbacks, 0 pressures allowed by Becton. And the one pressure that maybe could have been a pressure was actually a huge play in the game. And watching it was impressive seeing how Becton finished. Becton last night had a lot of pancake blocks. And I know what a lot of people are going to say. Well, it was against the backups for the Buccaneers. It's against guys that aren't that great. But here's my thing with that. Yes, these weren't the starters. But just to be in an NFL camp and on an NFL field in the preseason, you have to be somewhat of a football player and somewhat of an athlete and somewhat of a professional that they're even looking at you to get an opportunity. And Mekhi Becton was just throwing people last night, was just pushing them, bullying them, beating them down on the ground. And I think the best play I saw from Becton was probably the biggest play of the night, which was the Zach Wilson scamper. Now, everyone's going to talk about Zach, and I'll get to Zach in a little bit and how he made a great play there. But if you go back and watch the film, the reason that was a big play was because of Becton. Because on that play on the right side, the defensive end tried to cut into the middle, try to chip in, try to sneak in between that gap between the guard and the tackle. Becton initially was hand fighting, lost for a second. The defensive end was able to cave in, But because he was going inside, what you saw was Becton basically just pushed the guy onto the ground. And more importantly, once the guy was on the ground, Becton almost jumped on him and basically pancaked, finished the block, and kept him on the ground. And what that did for Zach was it basically opened up the entire right side of the field for him to make that scramble and to make that play. And for Becton, like, I'll be honest, like, there's been times I've seen him at left tackle and I go, I don't know. Like, I like a lot of the potential, but he doesn't seem as comfortable. Like, right tackle, as much as Becton I know doesn't want to play right tackle, he looks really comfortable there. And he should be getting the first team reps at right tackle. And what was interesting too last night is some of the ways the Jets are telling you how they feel about certain players and what they envision for certain players. What do I mean by that? What was the starting offensive line last night? The starting offensive line last night was you had Tittman at left guard, you had Max Mitchell at left tackle, and you didn't have Becton at the right tackle, but you had Turner. And I thought that was important because Tittman, we'll get into that update in a little bit, but Tittman as a guard, it's showing that the Jets are really considering playing at a guard position this year, especially with McGovern holding down the center for at least a year. I mean, he did have a bad snap in terms of not a terrible snap, but a little off snap for Tittman in this game as well. But I thought one of the bigger things, too, was watching this game is I think the Jets have kind of told you now how they're thinking about the offensive line, where Max Mitchell, to me right now, their plan is to have Mitchell be the backup left tackle. And Mitchell has struggled this camp, but I think a lot of it has just been bouncing around between the left and the right tackle spots, not getting comfortable. Max Mitchell last night looked pretty comfortable. And the one thing about Mitchell that I noticed as a right tackle is Mitchell's not really a mauler. Mitchell can seal off, but his biggest strength to me is pass blocking. When I watch his tape, he's a much better pass blocker than a run blocker. And what I think the Jets are doing is actually smart. I think Max Mitchell could be a left tackle for this team. Now, when I say a left tackle, is he going to be an elite left tackle? No. Is he going to be like a Pro Bowl tackle? Probably not. But I think he could be a very serviceable left tackle in the NFL. I think the Jets are showing that Dwayne Brown's going to be the starter, but they are grooming Max Mitchell to be the left tackle. And that if Dwayne Brown were to go down, Max Mitchell's probably the left tackle. And because of that, now you move to the right side. Mekhi Becton. I think the team likes Becton at the right tackle spot better. And I think that they wanted to move him there last year. And part of the reason is going off Becton's strength. Becton is the opposite of Mitchell. Becton's strength is in the run blocking game. He's decent in pass protection, but his best skill set is the run blocking. And because of that, he seemingly fits better on the right side of the offensive line. And I know it's not perfect, like in terms of run blocking and pass blocking, left tackle, right tackle. But I thought Becton looked really good at the right tackle spot. And with Turner, I think that the Jets are looking at it as the right tackle spot, especially because it's not the blind side. They can get away with Turner at right tackle. It's not going to help them, but I don't think it's going to kill them. But if Becton can be this team's right tackle, maybe he's not even opening day. I think what we'll be telling is how it goes this week if Becton's getting reps with the first team. Because Becton, despite how well he has played, has not gotten any reps with the first team in a game and has barely gotten reps with the first team in practice. So watching that this week, I think, will be huge. And look, I believe what Robert Saleh says. He wants the best 11 offensive linemen out there. And for me, Becton out there at the right tackle is better for this team than having Turner at the right tackle. Becton has a lot more upside in them. Jets need to find out if Becton has any future with this team because he hasn't played football basically in 2 years. They've invested a high draft pick in him. They didn't even pick up the fifth-year option. So for Becton, what they need to do is figure out the answer is if he can be this team's right tackle. And to be honest with you, I think it's a good move. I think it's smart to have him at the right tackle position and really just get the best 5 offensive linemen out there. And for this team, I think it's got to be with Becton at that position. And speaking of the offensive line, I'll get more into the quarterbacks. Joe Tippmann, of course, got hurt last night. Izzy Abanikanda got hurt as well. Izzy seemingly is better. It seems like it's a leg contusion. When I saw it and how he couldn't put any weight on it, I thought it was a knee injury. I thought he might be done for the season. Still waiting on that update. Joe Tippmann having a knee injury as well. The thing with Tippmann, though, which I think gives a little bit of hope, is usually when it's a major knee injury, you can tell like the guy is hobbling off the field, can't put weight on it, goes down. Like those are the serious knee injuries. I'm hoping it's basically maybe he got knocked in the knee. Maybe he's got like a knee bruise, something that basically maybe holds him out. You hope it's not long term, especially because this is a player that's ascending and could be a big help on the offensive line. Because if the tackles aren't great, at least you feel good with Tippmann on the interior. I thought he played well guard last night. They were playing at the left guard position. And I think that's very telling as well, that the Jets are trusting him at that left guard position, that they are starting to view him as either as a center or guard, one of the best offensive linemen on this team. So we will be waiting on that. I'll just double check really quick to make sure that there hasn't been any injury updates. But last time I checked, there was no injury updates on Tippmann. Again, with knee injuries, you're always concerned. But seeing that you didn't really see him hobble off, or it seemed that major, that hopefully it's nothing serious. Even if you have to miss a couple weeks, I'll be honest, it sucks, but I also would rather have him for most of the season or part of the season than not having him out there at all. So hopefully Tippmann's okay, but I'm just hoping that it's nothing major serious, especially because Tippmann has the versatility to play 3 different positions on this team. And I think he can play them very well. So let's get to some of your questions. I'll get to the standouts of the game. Just a reminder, guys, if you're joining us now or after the video, go to the community page right now. I have a poll. Should Mekhi Becton be this team's starting right tackle? So if you are interested in checking that out on Rich Sports Talk here on the YouTube channel, go over to the community tab, check that out, see if you put your vote in. I'm going to check to see if we got any results so far on that poll. But again, the community page, should Mekhi Becton be the starting right tackle? And right now, 100% of you are saying yes, he should be. All right, let's get there. And guys, I also apologize. I put on the community page that I was at the game last night. Next time I go to Jets games live, again, that means the video won't be up until the next day. But I'll make sure to put it out on my social media where I'm going to be at the Jets game. If you want to come up, say hello, give some of your thoughts, give some of your opinions, interact with me. Like, I would love to talk to you guys in person, meet some of you great guys out there as well. Tony Alexio. I mean, Boyle is what he is. I think he showed you at least that he could operate an offense. And look, I love Strevler's athletic ability, but he's limited throwing wise. And Boyle's the 3rd string quarterback. I think that they just want someone that's professional in here as well. Don't trade Becton. We need to keep Becton until the wheels fall off from Abby Fresh. Look, I hope the wheels don't fall off. I don't think the Jets are going to trade Becton. I saw that at the beginning of camp. I think Zach Rosenblatt wrote an article about that. But my thought on that is, unless you're getting something great back, but even then, you're not going to get a good tackle at this point. And that's my other favorite thing is people killing the Jets. Oh, they didn't improve on the tackle. Like, where were they magically going to improve on a tackle? The best ones were gone before the 10th pick in the draft. Free agency crop wasn't great. I mean, everyone's like, oh, tackles just go on trees. Like, it just drives me nuts because, like, I can literally count on one hand who's got a great offensive line in the NFL. You know what 20 teams have? A lot of questions on the offensive line. You can't tell me that Tampa Bay didn't come out last night questioning their offensive line. The Panthers were questioning their offensive line. I think offensive line, there is a lot of questions out there. Yeah, they're not trading Cook. They're not trading Cook for Martin. And Martin just signed the big deal, so that's pretty much done. And Tony, with respect on Cook, yeah, Cook hasn't even played a game, guys. And look, in some ways, you know what was funny during that game last night, Ronald Perry? Like, I'm sitting with my friend at the Jet game when Izzy went down, and his first thought, we both looked at each other. Our first thoughts well, I guess the Cook side looks really good right now, but it looks like Izzy hopefully isn't too serious. It's frustrating. And again, my other thought too was preseason's hard, especially because you only have so much roster space. I was kind of looking at that game and going, why is Izzy out there in the fourth? But he also needs reps. It's like you can't win, you can't lose. The other thing too, which I thought was interesting too, is we talk about who's going to be the third running back. Zonovan Knight getting all those carries, does that prove that the Jets have him as the fourth and then Michael Carter's won the third job, or are they just trying to build him up for the third spot? So I'd love to hear your opinions on that in the comments below. And if you're joining us after the live stream, you can, of course, comment on the video and I'll get to the next question. I think the problem with that, though, Abby, is rotating offensive linemen are hard because you need to get in a rhythm, and it's also not fair for Elijah Vera Tucker to, go a couple plays with Turner next to him and then a couple with Becton. I'm really curious to see the Giant game because I can see a couple trains of thoughts with that, which is Becton, of course, looks strong in the last two games, playing 25 snaps a game, but you probably are close to almost 50 snaps in a regular game. Do the Jets go the route of, well, we have 2 weeks off? Do we put him in for 40 snaps and see how he handles 40 or 35 snaps? Do they play him with the first team just to get used to the first team for their 10 to 15 snaps and then take him out of the game? There is a lot to think about there. So I'm curious to see what they do there. A lot of fighting in the comments right now. So MC is a must keep at running back. Michael Carter. I don't know. Michael Carter, I like as a running back. Knight, though, to me, I think he's got a little bit more. I think he's got a little bit more, brings something to the table the Jets don't have, which is, to me, he's a little bit more of a physical back and a guy that can actually break off a run as opposed to Carter. I mean, Carter brings the versatility of catching out of the backfield, pass blocking, but you also have Cook that can do that as well now. I think Carter's going to stay, though, just because he's really well liked in that locker room, really well respected in that locker room. So I just feel that with Knight, too, I think Knight's shown some ability in this league. But the one thing is I do feel the Jets, and this is part of the roster juggling you have in the NFL, is basically who can get through to the practice squad. And I feel like with Knight, there might be a team that might be interested, but I feel like he can get through. And that's a lot of the roster juggling that you have to do. So getting back to some of the big things last night, we talked about Rodgers. We'll get to some of the standouts. And one of the big ones to me was Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson last night, 9 of 13, 69% passing, 70 yards, 82 rating, and 41 rushing yards. But it was also interesting, too, because in the pregame, Aaron Rodgers basically made some interesting comments, which was he wants to be here for a couple of years, but his goal is to hand off this team to Zach Wilson. Now, the problem with that might be Wilson's technically under contract for 2 more years. Could the Jets technically give him a 5th-year option at the end of this year? Maybe. Maybe that's part of the reason why Rodgers cleared some of the cap space so they're able to keep Zach Wilson. And look, I do think that in the Jets long term, I would like to see them try to keep Wilson. I also think it would be the best thing for Wilson. Now, there's the argument that Zach could use a change of scenery, getting out of the New York market, getting out of the New York media, and I can get that argument. But at the same time, I think the best thing for him is to learn from a quarterback with a very similar skill set, someone that he respects, and someone that plays the game just like him. And being able to do that, I think, will be helpful. And I understand it's the preseason. There's no complicated defenses. Zach isn't going against the cream of the crop defensively. But the one thing I will give Zach a lot of credit for is, and it's funny because I saw some criticism saying, well, why isn't Zach pushing the ball down the field? We know Zach can make the throw down the field. What was Zach Wilson's biggest problem? It was being efficient, and it was getting the football out quickly. And you're already seeing he's getting the football out quicker than he ever has. But the other thing, too, was hitting the easy ones, checking it down to the running backs, checking it over the middle to the receivers, getting these out routes. And again, there was a couple throws last night. The throw to the outside of Brownlee was not a great one. But with Zach, I'm seeing progression. I'm seeing accuracy getting better. I'm seeing the footwork. After the game on the big run, which you saw, why the Jets love this kid is the ability to make the big plays with his legs. Zach, even after the game, said, look, I talked to Aaron. Aaron says I need to use my legs more because I had that great playmaking ability. I do think Zach, though, is still a little tentative because of last preseason when he got hurt early in the preseason. We also have to keep that in mind, too, where when Zach first came back, I don't think he was 100% healthy, and it hurt his confidence last season. So seeing him kind of being rebooted, being refreshed, and also not having the pressure on playing this year, it's just doing his own thing, being able to develop, I think is incredibly important. And I'm seeing a lot of progression from Zach, which is encouraging. And I think the Jets have a plan. And in a perfect world, Rodgers plays here for 2 seasons, hopefully helps this team win a Super Bowl at the very least. They're in the hunt for a Super Bowl. But then you hand it off to Zach. And if Zach can be this team's franchise quarterback for 10 years, because look, it's hard to find quarterbacks. And you're likely with Rodgers not going to be picking close to the top anytime soon. So having Rodgers being able to hand it off would be great. Outside Zach, a couple big standouts last night. I thought Ashton Davis just played really well. And Ashton Davis, I know, is another one of those, eye roll players with the Jets. A lot of fans haven't loved Davis. But look, Davis has, I think, progressed really nicely. Now, I don't think he'll be a starter, but if you had to play Ashton Davis this season, I wouldn't feel horrible about it. Last night, made a couple big plays, couple tackles for losses, good coverage last night. He is someone that I think is quietly developing. And unfortunately for Davis, I think he kind of got thrown in a little bit early, kind of like with Zach, a little over his head, where when the Jets drafted him, Davis, let's be honest, was going to be almost like a redshirt season. He was playing behind Jamal Adams and Marcus May. And I feel that the goal was with the Jets, try to get another year out of Adams. And if they couldn't extend him, then move him and then put Davis in there. Or once Marcus May's contract came to an end, they had an inroad for Davis. Fortunately, we know the story. Jets had to trade Adams. Davis was thrown in very early, struggled early. Whole new scheme last year, coming off of an injury in the first year with Saleh. Then, of course, the Jets added more veteran safeties. Didn't really get a chance to play last year, but even when he did, had that big impactful interception in the Cleveland game. And look, I think Davis is never going to be like a great safety, but at least I feel like it's showing that the Jets have some safety depth. Where coming this season, especially when Chuck Clark got hurt, you were worried as a Jet fan about the depth. I thought he played very well. The defensive line continuing to really thrive. Saw McDonald. You saw the Jets have Jermaine Johnson a couple series and then take him out very early to keep him fresh. The great kick return game last night. I feel like Brownlee, unfortunately, is probably going to be a practice squad player at this point. But overall, like, those are my thoughts from that game last night. Of course, we're still waiting to see what happens with some of the injury stats as well and some of the injury updates. I know Tittman will be the big one. Izzy, I think, also will be a big one too. And unfortunately with Izzy, the good news for the Jets is that he would be the third running back. It's not as big of a loss as Tittman would be. But look, I do feel that, like, you watched Becton last night. And again, I get that it wasn't in the 18, but was able to get to the 7 level, was able to finish off blocks. I thought he had a good night. Now, I'd like to see him go against some of the starters, but we will see coming up. All right, let's get back to some of these games as well. Okay. Ashton Davis had a really good game against Tampa. Yeah, I thought he had one of his best games last night, and apparently Tony Alexio agrees with me on that. I haven't liked Zach, but he's growing on me. And look, I think that Zach, and it was funny because at the game, he was getting the Zach Wilson chance after the great run. And look, I think the Jet fans have come around a little bit to Zach, where I do think there is still a portion of the fan base that never wants to see Zach Wilson on the field in a Jets uniform ever again. But I do think that Hard Knocks and One Jets Drive have helped soften things for Jet fans, where you see that Zach is really working hard to be a good quarterback. And I think a lot of guys are seeing that he was overwhelmed last year, and just having the ability to step back and develop. And all right, before I get deeper into this, can I go on a little bit of a Zach Wilson rant? Because there's one thing I'm getting kind of sick and tired of, where I'm seeing like all these Zach Wilson jokes. Zach Wilson's a bust, and I get it. It's the Jets. People love to poke fun at the Jets and their fans, which drives me nuts. And I know drives Jet fans nuts. But, the media that keeps saying, oh, Zach Wilson's a bust, Zach Wilson's finished. You know what, with Zach, at least I'm seeing a kid that's progressing and coming out of this. I'm like, you know what? I think Zach has a chance to make it. You know what no one's talking about right now, which is driving me a little nuts, is who was the guy that was picked after Zach? Oh, that's right. Trey Lance. 49ers gave up a bunch of picks to go up and get him, right? I don't know if you've noticed out of San Francisco, but it looks like Lance is not going to be the starter. It's going to be a 7th round pick, Brock Purdy, who, by the way, has struggled in camp and has thrown 10 interceptions in practice. But he is going to be the starter over the 3rd overall selection. So everyone just killing the Jets on Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson, at the very least, yes, he has struggled in the NFL, but you've seen glimpses from a couple of his runs, a couple of his throws, that he has the talent to play in this league. He's got to figure it out. And Tony Alexio, Zach into the screen, stepping into his throws. Yeah, like that's the thing. Like with the Jets, unfortunately, hindsight's 2020. LaFleur, unfortunately, was asked to do something he wasn't supposed to, which was develop the quarterback, which wasn't going to be his initial job. Now you have someone that has come in and can teach, because again, as much as I respect Joe Flacco, we don't know how much Joe Flacco had to teach him. And Joe Flacco played football a very different way than Zach Wilson, where you look at Wilson and Rodgers, they play football the same way. But that's the thing, Abby. I think he's going to be a rotational safety as opposed to star. But if a star went down, I'm feeling a lot better about his depth. Hey, Rich, treating a guy deserving the next game. What do you think? He doesn't have special teams value, but range and hitting abilities. They're also curious to see how Brownlee versus Gibson for the 6th spot goes. I think Gibson's going to win that because of the kick return ability. He had the great kick return last night. Trey Dean, I think he had a couple penalties last night too. Dean, I think it's going to be tough to make it on this roster just because of how deep they are. I think he'll be one of those ones that make the practice squad, and he'll be very close, but I just don't see him making that. I don't see why fans like Brownlee. Well, Brownlee's been featured a lot, Abby, in like the One Jets Drive. He was someone that they were high on. Sal's even come out and said that Brownlee was a guy that they would have drafted, but they were lucky to get undrafted. Look, early in camp, he's making unbelievable catches. He had a great leaping catch early in the camp, which really sparked a lot of people like, oh, this is something. Since then, it's cooled off. So that's one of the reasons Brownlee's gotten a lot of pub. And don't forget, too, with Hard Knocks, you knew there's going to be some storylines, and I think a lot of people were thinking who's going to be the storyline, because they always like to usually get, and again, Hard Knocks has been a little bit different the way they've done it this year. I wonder how much it's because the Jets want certain things in there. I'm curious to see. I mean, Becton's got to be the feature story this week on episode 3, unless the Jets don't want that. So if he's not out there, you know why. But I think that's why Brownlee's getting a lot of pub. Yeah, Mims, like that's the other thing. That's the other thing that pissed me off too, is Mims couldn't even make it through the camp, so the Jets don't even get the compensation pick for Mims. And is there a chance they could get him on a practice squad? But look, with Mims, I feel bad for Denzel Mims to a degree because I feel bad for that draft class because they were drafted into a no-win situation, which was basically because of COVID, they didn't have the preseason. Basically, they didn't have the extended workouts. So already they're coming in behind the eight ball. They're coming into a toxic situation with a coach that everyone wanted fired the previous year. And then you bring in a new coach, a new system that is vastly different. I mean, basically, I give Joe Douglas more of a pass in the 2020 draft than a lot of people do. And the reason I do that is because he was getting ingredients for a very different chef, a bad chef, but he was trying to get the right ingredients for him. And Mims fit that equation. He did not fit as well with the new one. And look, I don't think Mims is a bad kid, but I always we'll go back and I always bring this example. And again, if you follow this channel a lot, I brought this example a lot. I apologize if I'm, beating the dead horse again, but for the new viewers, one of the things I always go back to is the night he was drafted, something will always stick out to me. First was the Jets could have selected him earlier. They dropped back 13 spots in the second round to get another pick. So if the Jets really love Denzel Mims that much, do you really think they would have moved back that many spots? Like if they were that confident Mims is going to be a great receiver and that he's going to be a good player, I think that they wouldn't have propelled back, but they did. And the other thing I will go to is his former college coach who had just got hired by the Panthers. This was someone that recruited Denzel, developed Denzel, had Denzel in his offense, in his coaching room, at Baylor, had him for years. And guess what? The Panthers needed receivers. Like that to me was like too good of a match made in heaven. And his own college coach didn't take him. That to me always was a red flag. And unfortunately, it has come to the bit fruition. You look at Zach Wilson's stats, he's not bad. He's too conservative. He'd rather throw it mid-range than a check down. Well, his stats this preseason are bad, but last year they were bad. I mean, you can't be a successful quarterback in the NFL when you're throwing about 54% completion percentage, 55%. It doesn't work. It just doesn't. Scrambling forward, good improvement. Yeah, like he needs to use his legs more. But again, like I don't mind a couple runs, but I'd rather almost have a quarterback available and someone that's not going to hurt themselves just running around scrambling all the time too. Like he needs to be able to stay healthy, and he did get hurt scrambling last year. Is Fant still available? I don't know where. Let me think about this. Where Fant is right now. No, Fant signed with the Texans, so he's off the market. And yeah, Fant though last year, I was a little surprised the Jets didn't bring him back. But again, you look at his PFF grade last year, 48, was not good last year. Like Fant was funny because Fant went from being someone I was pounding the table for the Jets to extend to basically thank God the Jets didn't extend him. So that was someone I was thinking about. Jack Conklin's on the market, but he's a right tackle, and he's got some off the field issues as well. One guy I kind of – it was funny that you guys bring this up. One guy I kind of was thinking about the other day, I actually brought this up last night to my buddy while we were at the game. He shot this down. I would love to hear you guys. I doubt this would happen, but one guy I was thinking about too was Kelvin Beachum. Like, again, I know Beachum 34. I know he's not an elite tackle, but I feel like Beachum is a serviceable left tackle. Like, he was someone I was thinking about. And with the Cardinals right now, they're terrible. It looks like they're trying to tank. Like, he was someone I'm thinking, like, especially the Cardinals are bad early. Could you get him, especially if the offensive line has like an injury or two or they get nicked up? Like that was someone I would have looked at. Like again, I'd love to hear you guys. I feel like some people are gonna be like, oh God, no. Yeah, Abby Fresh is like, nope, I'm out. I'm out. Wow. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. So Fant is on the Texans. He's no longer out there. Jennifer coming in there as well. Thanks for giving us that heads up, Jennifer. I can try to look to see again who's on the free agent market for the NFL, and it's weird too because some of these guys do have some of these guys too. Like you're like, do they? How much they want to play? Are they willing to basically play for a little bit less? I know the big thing I know that came out this week was Bakhtiari. I doubt Bakhtiari gets done, guys, because again, I know Rodgers put the Instagram post out there, but I just feel like that with Bakhtiari, I mean, he's got $30 million of dead cap. I don't see how it works even financially with the Jets who are up against the cap. And look, the other reason I don't think it happens too is Green Bay. I don't think Green Bay wants to do Aaron Rodgers any favors and help him win a Super Bowl. I don't think the Green Bay Packers are just going to give Bakhtiari to the Jets to help them. Because number one, I don't think they want to see Rodgers succeed in New York and prove that, no, it wasn't. It was the Packers' fault, not Rodgers' fault. And the other big thing, too, I look at is they need to make Jordan Love work. And if you want Jordan Love to work, how does it help that you're going to take his best offensive lineman, arguably, and clearly his left tackle right before the season and trade him? It just doesn't make sense. But again, like with Beachum, I know a lot of people are like, ugh, like why Beachum? Like that, he's terrible. Like he's bad. Like again, that's the problem. Like you look right now at the market, this is what's out there for tackles. I mean, the intriguing one that came up, though, was Jason Peters. Jason Peters, of course, Adam Schefter tweeted, I don't know if you guys saw this yesterday, that Jason Peters wants to come back. Jason Peters, of course, is at the age of 40. But he is someone, if I'm the Jets, I would look into. And now to play tackle, probably not. But again, with Dallas last year, he did kick inside to guard. Maybe he could play guard. Started a game last year for Dallas, played in 10 games. I don't think Peters would be the worst option, but it's also like the Dwayne Brown thing where it's like, okay, they keep proving that they can play at an old age, but when does the drop-off come? Like, when do they fall off the hill? And I mean, last year, 70 grade for Jason Peters, but don't forget, a lot of that was at the guard position or the right tackle position. And then the question also then becomes, well, if Jason Peters is going to play right tackle for the Jets, what does that mean for Mekhi Becton? Like I would look at Jason Peters hard. I would really look at him, especially for depth. But it also comes down to the roster juggling because the Jets also have two young offensive line, Max Mitchell, that they're going to want to keep. The kid they just drafted from Pittsburgh, you're not going to put them on the practice squad. Like, you only have so much roster space. If you bring in Peters, what offensive linemen are you getting rid of? And I just don't think that there's one the Jets really want to get rid of at this time, or one that they feel comfortable getting rid of as well. Yeah, I'm so done with Becton. I would take Peters on and I think you could get Peters on a different decent contract. Well, I'm okay with Beach. His PFF rating is a 33 out of 81 tackles in the league, but I think Joe Douglas looked for familiar. Jason Pierce is probably a move here. And that's the other thing too. Don't forget how long he's been. He was there basically in he was there for the Eagles for years. So I think Peters is interesting. And the other thing too is Peters puts that out there because he's trying to tell teams, hey, I'm interested in playing. I'm good to play. The one thing I worry about with Peters is I don't worry about his run blocking. I worry a lot, though, about his pass block at this point with his age. But, one thing too is that this defensive line is going to help. I mean, you look at this defensive line, and let's not forget that the Jets have had 8 sacks and 14 QB hits in the first 3 preseason games, and they haven't played any of the starters. No Carl Lawson, no John Franklin Myers, no Quinnen Williams. So the Jets defensive line is looking really good. And Jason Peters, like, if I had to bring Jason Peters in, I would put him at right tackle, but it also comes down to how confident you are in Mekhi Becton. Like, if they feel that Mekhi Becton can play the right tackle spot, they need to play him, because they also need to get an answer. Because if Mekhi Becton goes out and, let's say, maybe plays 16 games, maybe he does miss a game, but plays 16 games, plays a really good right tackle, well, then you're going to have to figure out if you're going to pay him. And if you pay him, the good news is if he stays healthy and it works out, you have a long-term solution at the right tackle position. With Peters, it's basically a Band-Aid. Like, I'd rather have the Jets take a shot on Becton, see if it works. Let's say Becton gets hurt early in the season. Peters, there's a chance he could still be out there. A lot of this also has to gauge with the market too. Like, if the Jets feel Jason Peters would be there. One of the reasons they were really pushing hard on Dwayne Brown last year, and why I was screaming to sign Dwayne Brown last year, was because I always kept saying, get Dwayne Brown here, because you don't know how healthy teams are going to be on the offensive line. And I'm trying to remember, because basically they brought him right in after the Becton injury. But if you guys can help my memory, there was a team last year in the NFL that lost their left tackle. And I came on the record saying, thank God the Jets got the Dwayne Brown deal they got done when they did, because the problem I kept saying was, could you imagine if they didn't get Brown signed, 2 days later, this left tackle went down. Now, all of a sudden, you got another team that's desperate and has a little bit of a bidding war with the Jets. So that was the one thing I was looking at last year. So I'm happy it all worked out. But Peters will be great insurers. Please cut useless Turner. Turner, I don't think they can cut Tony. And I'm just going to look it up really quick, what his contract is with the Jets right now, because I do believe it's got guarantees in it. Trying to remember. So yeah, Billy Turner, 1 year, $1.6 million contract, $1 million guarantee. So they could cut him and take the hit, but the other thing too is Rodgers really likes Turner, and you kind of want to keep Rodgers happy. And I don't think Turner is a good depth piece. Like, if he had to start a game or two, I feel he'd be a high-end backup, but I don't feel great with him starter. But again, with Turner, I don't think the Jets want to have the dead money. Peters, yeah, I like Peters a lot. He could be a good mentor, but the thing I'm looking at right now is, who are you getting rid of if you bring in Peters? And if you bring in Peters, the biggest problem that we keep talking about the Jets is how old their tackles are, and can their tackles make it through the season? So now all of a sudden, we're talking about bringing in an even older tackle than Dwayne Brown, asking him to play an entire season, and basically going, okay, you're going to be playing the whole season. And look, I think Billy Turner is okay. I mean, last night we did see Tippmann was at guard. We saw Schweitzer was at right guard, and they could technically cut him and get only the $1 million dead cap. I just don't think that the Jets are really going to do that. So my biggest thing too is I'm just trying to think about, like, who's going to make this roster. Like, you look at the offensive line right now, I think Dwayne Brown, Max Mitchell, Billy Turner, Laken Tomlinson, Elijah Vera Tucker, Kyle McGovern, Joe Tippmann, Carter Warren, Wes Schweitzer, Mekhi Becton. Who are you cutting? And that's 10 offensive linemen. I mean, I know everyone's going to say Turner, but I don't think the Jets are going to want to do that. And plus, the Jets, Brian Turner, because the offensive coordinator likes him, and the quarterback you have like him. Yeah, Jennifer, I would tend to agree with you with Turner, but could the Jets survive if Dwayne Brown is playing decent at left tackle? Can the Jets survive an okay Billy Turner at right tackle? I think they can, But ideally, the Jets should be playing Becton. I think Becton needs to be the day one right tackle. If Becton fails as a right tackle, you get answers, you get clarity. It tells the Jets, okay, he's not a long-term answer, but also tells you, okay, maybe we look at a Jason Peters who's a free agent. Maybe we bring them in. Maybe we look on the trade market around the trade deadline. Like Turner, to me, like if Turner has to start, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But don't forget, Jennifer, the other thing I think is telling, and this is why the Tippmann injury is frustrating, is they're playing Tippmann at guard. And that's telling me they're trying to get the best five out there. And maybe the Jets in their head are going, okay, if Becton fails at right tackle, we want to keep AVT at right guard, and it'd be better for us to keep AVT at right guard. But if we kick him out to right tackle, that allows us to then put Joe Tippmann in at right guard or left guard and allows us to get a really good starting five out there. So just that to me is the question. And Sam, what do you mean the line is set? Like, do you mean the opening day line? Like, I don't think it's set. I think there's a lot of questions. Peters for Max Mitchell. What, Max Mitchell are talking about? I'm confused. Like a trade? Peters is a free agent. Like they can just sign. I'm sorry. I don't get what you're talking about there. If you could clarify that a little bit. And again, guys, if you're joining us during the live stream and or also after the live stream, you can go to the community page and vote. Should Mekhi Becton be the team's starting right tackle? I have a pretty good idea. They're not cutting Max Mitchell, Abby. They're not. Max Mitchell was a fourth-round pick who could be a starting offensive lineman for them. I think Mitchell is better than Turner. And to me, the Jets are telling you they feel that Mitchell could potentially be this team's future left tackle. They're playing him there. And I thought he played well last night. So Mitchell's also fourth-round pick. If he becomes a starter for this team, that means they're going to get the next 2 years a reliable starting tackle for fourth-round money. That you don't find that every day. That is a bargain. Like you want to talk about being a smart GM and making smart moves, like that would be a smart investment. Can Becton's right knee hold up with more pressure at right tackle? Tony, that is a fascinating question. Unfortunately, I didn't go to medical school. That was one thing, too, is watching the game, you did notice that Becton has a hulking knee brace on that right knee. And basically, at playing the tackle position, that is really your push-off leg when you're in the right tackle spot, when you do that step back, that's your plant leg, like when you're stepping back and you're planting. So it is concerning, but at the same time, to me at least, it feels that I think Becton looked better at right tackle than he did at left. And the other thing too is the Jets need to find a way to get him onto the field potentially. And it's clear that they want Dwayne Brown to be the left tackle. And if that's the case, Becton's not playing guard, he's playing right tackle. So I get it too, but the other thing too is the Jets at this point and Becton at this point, they need to figure out if he can stay healthy. That's the biggest question about Mekhi Becton is, can he stay healthy? And if he can't stay healthy, it answers a lot of questions, because if he gets hurt this year for a significant amount of time, his Jet career is pretty much over. I don't think the Jets gave him a contract. There'll be a team that will take a shot on him because he's a first-round offensive lineman, but, it'll be a one-year prove-it type of deal, and it'll be, can you compete and stay healthy? So for Becton, like the Jets, I think the Jets need to find out too, like, can he go through even a majority of the season? Like if Becton plays 14 games, that to me would be a huge, huge win. But if not, it's very concerning. Like they need to find out, Tony, like you need clarity in this league. And right now, Mekhi Becton is about as murky of a future as you can possibly imagine in the NFL, especially considering where he was coming from, where he is basically projected to be. And look, I get holding up, but look, they need to figure it out. They need clarity. And for me, the best position is for right tackle. All right, guys, before I get into final thoughts, I want to see, does anyone have any final questions before we get out of here today, we'll recap the Hard Knocks episode coming out on Tuesday. I will probably be doing that during the day on Wednesday. So if you want, make sure to give us a subscribe. If there's any headlines you want me to look at, let me know. But let me know if there's any other questions. Again, if you're joining us after the live stream, put your questions in the comments below on this video, and I will answer them in the next video. But before we get out today, just seeing if anyone else has any final questions before we head out and we get this one ended today. Jets record this year. Look, I hate doing these previews just because I just hate doing these previews because, again, so much can happen during the year. I think the Jets win 10 or 11 games. They have a hard, brutal schedule early. I think they win 10 or 11 games. I think that they're going to be in the hunt for the division, the hunt for the wild card. I'm not saying they're going to win 13 games, but I think 10 to 12 wins is what their range will be. Leading rush, this is tough. I still think it's going to be Breece Hall. I think Breece Hall it'll be close, but I'm going to go with Breece. But I think they're going to use Cook a lot in the passing situations. He'll be a lot on third down. There might be a weird thing where so in trending topics, I think this is relevant too, guys, because Mekhi Becton 6 minutes ago actually tweeted basically, stay ready so you ain't got to get ready. Shout out to my dog Cam, thank you, bro. Never enough. Basically, showing off like his workouts and everything on June 13th and how he's basically training. So, so Mekhi Becton's already back on Twitter, especially after last night. And look, he backed it up. He posted for the Twitter game. I forget what he posted specifically, but he was basically talking up that he was going to have a big game, and he had a great game. So, yeah, guys, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. Again, if I'm at Jet games later this year, I'll let you know where I'll be. If you want to come talk to me, if you have any questions, you want to talk to me personally at the games. I put it a little bit out there late last night, but I was at the game. So if you see me out at MetLife, let me know. Say hi. Would love to talk to you in person. But until next time, I'm your host, Nolan Rich. Thanks so much for joining us here today on Rich Sports Talk. We will see you next time. Have a good one, everyone. And we will be, of course, talking about Hard Knocks, the next episode, when that is available. So make sure you join us for that. That should definitely be a fun one. But until next time, I'm Nolan Rich, and this is Rich Sports Talk.